All right, good evening and welcome to another week of discussion groups. And this week we are wrapping up our series, It's What We Do. And on Sunday we talked about our fifth and final core value, and that is generations. That as a church we want to be a body of Christ that resembles all generations because we believe there's value in generations. And it's going to take all generations being connected to one another in order for the legacies to be passed down and all that God did in one generation to be passed down to the next generation. So it's everybody. It's the young and it's the old and all those in between. And you know, in the book of Acts, when the church is just getting started, there's this picture of what the church would be like, and there's this phrase that says, though the young men will dream dreams and the old men will see visions. And it's just this incredible portrait of the church, that there's all these different generations playing their part, moving the body of Christ forward. And so at Southland, we're incredibly passionate about generations, and we want to see people from all walks of life come to know Jesus and to begin following Jesus and living out his calling on their life on a day-to-day basis. And so on Sunday we honed in a little bit, though. We honed in on the next up-and-coming generation that you and I as adults, we have a responsibility to. And so we want to be intentional about what we pass on to the next generation. Because here's the thing, if we're not intentional about giving them the right things, chances are we will accidentally give them the wrong things. We looked at three things that we give them that sometimes hurts us in return. It hurts when we give these things. It sets them up for more challenges down the road. And those three things are: one, we give them praise they don't deserve. We give them things they didn't earn. And also we give them freedoms they can't handle. And from there we jumped into a passage in Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning in verse 4, that says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. This is a full, all-in commitment. And it goes on to say, impress these things upon your children. And we talked about there's three things that we want to be intentional about giving the next generation. One, we want to give them a community worth having. We want them to grow up in a church understanding the value of being a part of the body of Christ and surrounded by other believers. Because like we talked about even a few weeks ago, it is hard to live the Christian life without depending on Christian friends. And so we want to give them a community worth having. We also want to give them a standard worth achieving. We want to be a body of Christ. We want to be a church, a community of believers that looks at the generation coming up, and we want to see their potential, and we want to believe in their potential, and we want to invest in their potential. And one of the best things that we can do for them in order to bring out that potential is to give them a standard and communicate to them God-honoring expectations in order to raise them up and to accomplish the great things that God has called them to. And the third thing, and we said, hey, listen, we want to give them a faith worth reproducing. I love that verse in verse 7 where it says, impress these things upon your children. And I don't know about you, but I so badly want to live a life that the next generation coming up looks at you and they look at me and they look at the other adults in the church and they're impressed by our lives. They're impressed by the way we live. They're impressed by the way we handle our finances and conduct our marriages, how we go through suffering and challenges. They're just impressed by our devotion to God and our passion and worship and our commitment to prayer. They're impressed by the lives that we live that resemble Jesus. And so we want to live a life that is so intentional about giving the next generation things to set them up for spiritual success. And we understand that it is going to be by the lives that we live and the example that we set that these kids are going to follow in our footsteps. We went on to say that Sunday's bottom line was simply this: your greatest accomplishment in life may be someone you raise, not something you do. And here's the thing, you don't have to be a parent in order to raise somebody in the next generation. You can be a children's volunteer, a youth volunteer, you can be a mentor, you can serve in a variety of different ways in which you can raise up the next generation. Billy Graham, who's a hero of mine, I've read his biographies, I think he's amazing. I love how he talks about his connection to his Sunday school teacher and how his Sunday school teacher, this widow who had no children, got to shape the spiritual life of Billy Graham. Now imagine, that could be you. And we don't know what God has called specifically for the next generation in our church, but we do believe this. It's something amazing. And every single one of us, we have a part to play. And what we do with our responsibility of raising that next generation has a huge impact on what the future of the church looks like. So, our greatest accomplishment may be someone we raise, not something we do. That said, I love you guys. I'm so excited about tonight's discussion. Once again, we have great leaders. Express your gratitude to them. And I'm praying for you. And let's be the best we can be at being intentional with this next generation. Have a great night.